Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It's your boy Not So Pro Satu, and today we are doing a tips and tricks videos on the best settings for Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Okay, so a lot of people have been asking me, a lot of the homies have been asking me, what are my settings, what do I run? So this is exactly what I'm gonna do. You can do it from the main menu, jump into multiplayer, and you just go right over here to this cogwheel, and let's go immediately into the graphics settings. So, for the graphics settings, your display mode, you can either have this in full screen exclusive or full screen borderless. There's not too much of a difference, but you will be costing resources if you can do windowed or full screen extended windowed. So I suggest one of the two. For display adapter, this is usually your graphics card. If you are on a laptop, you may have onboard graphics and your dedicated graphics card. Make sure you choose your better graphics card. Set your refresh rate to your native monitor refresh rate as well as your display. If you decide to go full screen borderless, these two become locked, but it should be that way anyways. Aspect ratio, I keep that automatic, but make sure that's the same as your screen. Restart shaders preloading, we're gonna hit this right after we've gone through all of the different settings. For the rest of your settings, you're gonna want to keep everything to your own personal preference, whatever type of brightness. If you have an NVIDIA graphics card, I would recommend putting on NVIDIA reflex low latency, and if you have a lower end CPU, on plus boost can be helpful. Going right into sustainability, your eco mode preset, I would keep this at, well, it's kind of depending on how much VRAM cache you have. I would consider what you have. Look at this graph here, it'll tell you what to do. You can keep it on efficiency and it should be just fine. If you want to dive into it a little bit more, you could, in my opinion, put this on custom, turn off VSync menus. Again, you could have this off. I keep this at 100%, that's perfectly fine. Custom frame rate, I put that at custom. I put the max frame rate to 300, but realistically what you could do is you could have your max frame rate capped at whatever your speeds are. Your custom menu frame rate, I actually don't know why this is on 120. This should be all the way down to 60 to save resources. And out of focus frame rates, keep that to 30. For your reduced menu render, you can put this to optimal if you really need to. You can push up to native if things get a little bit too unappealing. Going down, focus mode, I would turn this up as high as you can go. I would keep it at about 90 if you can. This is just depending on how much VRAM cache you have. I personally keep it at 90 because, unfortunately, I keep this at 90 because your boy runs background apps, mostly for recording, whatever else, and I'm a Chrome addict. You gotta forgive me for that. I have my high dynamic range turned off. I do not have a high dynamic range monitor. If you do, then turning it on, you will see some performance take a hit for the high dynamic range, but it can look really nice. If we move over to quality, graphics preset, I would turn this, so this is depending again on your personal rig, but NVIDIA says frames win games, so I would turn this down to minimum. I would turn texture resolution to low and texture filter anisotropic, however you pronounce it, to high. That is a great utility with very little VRAM usage. Depth of field, again, that's your own personal choice. Detail quality, low. Again, frames win games. Shader quality, I would keep that at low too. You don't want to take up too many resources using shaders. If we go down to shadow and lighting, I would keep all of this very low, if not off. That's the best way to increase your FPS. Again, also with your tessellation, the one thing you could turn up if you wanted a little bit would be the weather grid volumes. It doesn't have too much of an effect on your VRAM. If we go over to view, I would highly suggest taking motion reduction presets and turning that off. Nobody likes motion blur, it's just terrible. Your field of view, now this will impact your FPS. However, I think that the cost of FPS is worthwhile for your capabilities in game. This is set, it cannot be all the way low as 60. I would set it no lower than 100, so that way you have at least a large enough field of view to see enemies on your peripheral. You can also choose this as a personal preference, whether or not you want your ADS field of view to be affected. That's your personal preference. Your third person preference field of view, I like it very high. Again, that's a personal preference sort of thing. However, the more enemies you can see, the better. If we go down to camera, I would turn world motion blur off. Just motion blur is terrible to begin with. Weapon motion blur, just motion blur in general is terrible. First person camera mode, I believe this is set to 100 at default. I would bring this down to 50, as well as third person down to 50. It will just make things look a little less shaky, wobbly, give you a cleaner look. And then for a bonus tip, I would turn inverted flashbang on to give you just a little bit of FPS when you get flashbang. So that's the end of the first part. If we go into the second part and go into audio, there are a couple of audio settings you might want to change. You can mix your audio as to what you hear right here, depending on the type of music, on the dialogue, and whatever sorts of effects. I keep this all at 100. I don't really need it mixed. Usually I actually just end up just toggling things from the master game volume. That's your own choice. However, a lot of people don't forget to check the correct audio device that you have, be it your headphones, be it your default system settings, whatever, and your output mode. They are highly important. Furthermore, going down just a little bit, in audio mix, Treyarch mix is something I personally like. However, if you're trying to listen for the enemies, get a tighter sonic space. Sonic space is where you hear the lows and the highs, the bass and the trebles. You can choose headphones bass boost if that's something you want to hear more, or bass cut if you want to take way lower frequencies. Sucker Punch is going to give you the tightest dynamic range, so your explosions aren't going to sound as loud, but your footsteps will sound comparably louder. This is, of course, your own personal preference. If you want the absolute best for finding footprints and snapping on enemies, Sucker Punch is probably your way to go. One other thing, small bonus tip. If I were you, I would turn on reduced tinnitus sounds. This is that terrible sound that you hear. Most people don't like that, so I would turn that on if I were you guys. Next, let's hop over to voice chat. I would, if it were me, turn your voice chat up and try to keep it fun, keep an open lobby, say hello, talk to people, communicate with your team. Try to put it out there. I would put mine into push to talk, and I believe that the default for a push to talk microphone is Z. Okay, now that you made it to the end of the video, here is a bonus tip for you, something that a lot of you may not have fully realized. I would, if I were you, turn on skip intro movie. So that way every time you boot up Call of Duty, you don't have to keep watching the intro scene. Saves a little bit of FPS and rendering time as well. One more bonus tip for all of you cool cats who made it to the end is, if you notice here, I have FPS, latency, packet loss, and whatnot. Somehow I have FPS on twice. If you want to turn on your telemetry data, it can be found right here in interface and under telemetry. Your FPS counter, server latency, packet loss, and a bunch of other things you can go ahead and toggle on or off at your choosing. I personally have FPS, server latency, and packet loss on. Just to let me know how my games are doing, because I play with a lot of friends from all around. Anyways, if you like that short, quick tutorial, leave a like rating down below. It really helps out the video. If you want a more in-depth tutorial, or if you want more tips or tricks or different tutorials, let me know in the comment section down below. It's your boy Not So Pro Satu. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Vacuous entities ascending and they're killing me. Vapid ass rappers in the industry. Make believe licks and money trees lead their lives of luxury. Slaying while they frightened, they ain't fooling me. In the great abyss of consciousness, there exists a concept that we tend to miss, and the consequence.